Next method to discuss is called the Borda count method. It's another very intuitive method, fairly commonly used for determining the outcome of an election given a preference schedule. And with the Borda count method, we need to have a full set of data. We can't just have single choice. It will not work because you'll see why. But basically, the position that each candidate has in each ballot determines a number of points that contribute to their total. And each candidate will have a certain board of total at the end of the election. Like, say, one person could have 150, another could have 200 or whatever. And then the winner is determined, and the ranking is determined on who has the most board of points. And basically, the higher up you are in the ballot, the more points you could get. So, like, for example, returning back to the class president example, uh, it had four tiers: first, second, third, and fourth. Basically, how it will work is the number of points you receive is the inverse order to the ranking. So a first place vote would be worth 4 points, a second place would be worth three, third two, and fourth one. Basically, higher. Obviously, this means more because they want this, but each vote is given a particular point total. And then what we must do is figure out the total of all the Borda points, and we'll do that in just a minute, and we'll look at that example. Now, one thing you might be wondering is why does the last place vote get a point, right? If they're last, they shouldn't get any points. But really, it doesn't necessarily matter because whether they're 0 or 1, we could have done this as 0, 1, 2, 3. And if you were to do it as 0, 1, 2, 3, it's actually going to give you the exact same results as if you go 1, 2, 3, 4. So first reason is it doesn't really make a difference anyways. But another reason is a lot of times these are not all of the candidates, right? A lot of times we might ask our voters to rank their top four candidates, but there might be 10 choices. So just the fact that it showed up should grant them points. And that's why every person on the ballot should get points. And really, if it, like, say you had five, it would be in inverse order. Basically, last place vote is always with one, then two, then three, then four in a standard Borda count. Now, technically, you can modify the Borda count to change the point tallies. Like, let's say, for example, in the class presidency, last place was worth one, third place was worth two, second place was worth three. Let's say we made first place worth 5 points or 10 points or something else arbitrarily. There could be reasons why we'd want to modify the point tallies, and that would also change the results. So modifying it will change the outcome. That's something I want to say is important, and it really just depends on how those point scales are modified. And there's reasons you might want to modify them as well. So what I wanted to do now is give you guys a second to figure out who would win this by board account. And you can go ahead and pause this if you want, but and if you're not really getting it, I'll walk through this example to begin with, and then we'll work on another activity in the next video. But I'm gonna go ahead and close out the PowerPoint and go back to the lecture notes because this is coming up on page 3 of the lecture notes. Who would win by board account? And I just wanted to show you how do I do it because you can obviously figure out how to find the outcome on your own and do it, but I have a very specific system uh, that I think might make it easier for you to find the answer. So what I like to do when determining the board account point totals for each of the candidates is do them one at a time. So for example, I could start with art just alphabetically, and I could figure out, well, what's his board point total. And how I like to do it is go through each tier and each ranking and see how many total votes they get. Like, for example, in this case, art had 14 first place votes. Also, what I recommend doing is writing the board account, the board point number for each tier to the left, because it's very easy to accidentally look at the ranking. But remember, the points that you're getting is reverse ranking. So I like to write it over here just as like a mental note. Okay, that's the number of points I'm getting, not 1 point. And so since Art got 14 first place votes and each one is worth 4 points, that's going to be 14 times 4 Borda points for those particular votes. And now I could calculate that individually. That's 28 times 2, 56 points. But I like to go through the entire thing and add them all up. So Art did not have any second place votes. He didn't have any third place votes. And then I would look at, well, how many fourth place votes did he have? He had 18, 22, 23 fourth place votes, and each one of those is only worth 1 point. Obviously, I don't really need to write that, but I kind of like to organize it in a way where I can see what I did, and if someone else, like say for example, you were comparing your answers to a classmate or you weren't getting the same thing as me, if you write out your work, you can easily tell, okay, what was different and why did I get it wrong, or you can then determine maybe the professor messed it up on accident in the video, which might happen from time to time. And so feel free to comment below if you think I made a mistake or if you just have questions in general. Or obviously come to Zoom, email me, post in the discussion board. So if you do have trouble with anything, there's a lot of ways you can communicate, and I am available and I'm here and I want to help. But anyways, that would be, we could also just throw that into our calculator to see what art's Borda count total would be. 14 times 4 plus 23 times 1 is 79 Borda points. And obviously we need to figure out everyone's Borda total before we can figure out who's going to win. So let's go ahead and do that. So Ben is up next, then Kathy, and then Debbie last but not least. Okay, so for Ben, I guess I'll circle them in yellow just to differentiate. But Ben had 4 first place votes, he had 14 second place votes, and he had 9 third place votes. So in my Borda tally, I like to do them in order. So 4 first place votes, each of those are worth 4 points. And how I'm kind of when I'm looking at this, what I kind of do is I calculate how many where there were, and I make sure to multiply it by this number, right? Because each one of those 4 votes is each worth 4 points. So 4 times 4 is 16. But I can just kind of say do this column times that. Then down here, this is 24 times 3 for the number of second place votes Ben had. And then Ben had 9 third place votes, each are worth 2 points. And he didn't have any last place votes, so I can skip those if I want to. But that way I can kind of look at them. And another way you could check yourself is to make sure, well, do each of these numbers should add up to the total number of voters? Because in this total system, we had 37 voters. And I wanted to make sure every one of those was taken into account. 14 plus 23 is 37. And 4 plus 24, 28 plus 9 is 37. So I can kind of see and make sure I've got everyone taken into account. I did not forget anything. And then we could figure out, well, what's Ben's Borda count total? So that's 16 plus 72 plus 18. Obviously, you could just do each of those calculations separately, but it looks like Ben should have 106 Borda points. And so obviously he's going to beat out Art in the Borda count. And we need to, check on Kathy and Debbie to see do any of them, can they top Ben? So I'll go ahead and circle Kathy in red. Kathy had 11 first place votes, 8 second place votes, and 18 third place votes, and no lasts. So that would be 11 times 4 plus 8 times 3 plus 18 times 2. And again, you don't have to do it exactly like I do it, because for some people it's not as easy to keep track of all these numbers at once. But since I'm a math teacher, I do like all sorts of math all the time. So like I'm pretty good at doing a lot of math in my head or doing a lot of things simultaneously. So just practice it on your own, see how you would do it, and make sure you're getting the same answers. And if not, try to figure out, well, why is it not coming out the same? But anyways, I can go ahead and get Kathy's Borda count total, which is 100. And lastly, we can go to do Debbie, who's just everyone who's uncircled. So Debbie had 8 first place votes, 5 second place votes were 3 points, 10. And see, I already almost made a mistake. I almost used the place to do the multiplier rather than the number. But if you do them in order, it's helpful. It's easier to remember, okay, I'm multiplying by 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. And again, just doing a little bit of practice, I think, will make this a little bit easier. Then 10 votes are worth 2 points. And then she had 14 last place votes worth 1 point. And adding all those up, 8 times 4 plus 5 times 3 plus, whoops, not multiply, plus 10 times 2 plus 14 times 1. I don't even need to do times 1, obviously, which would be a total of 81 points for Debbie. And once I'm done, then I can fully see, well, what happened. So we can see that Ben came out on top. He had the most, and we could rank them in order from least to greatest. So first place is going to go to Ben with 106 points. Second to Kathy with 104. And third to Debbie. And fourth to Art of course, which I can see over there. Anyways, we could get a complete ranking whether we wanted a winner only or to, figure out the full system, but we have our answer. And I thought I'd mention comparing to plurality. Notice that here Ben was the winner and Art came in dead last. And just to do a quick comparison, if we were using plurality instead of Borda count, notice it's kind of the opposite. Art came in first, Ben came in last. Kind of, it's a very, very different outcome. And if we're wondering, well, which is right? Well, it just depends on which system is being implemented. And as we continue in the later chapters, we'll learn other methods and kind of talk about that later. Okay, which method is fair? What are the issues with these methods? As a kind of a way to wrap up this chapter.